Bracketologists everywhere. Listen up. I wish I could have majored in bracketology. I wish I could put together some kind of ridiculous commercial that ends with 4 out of 5 bracketologists approve. Bracketologists everywhere want to make fun of the ACC. The other day, I went to ESPN.com. You may have heard of it. It is a website run by ESPN. And the main big story, right? There's the one with the big picture right up top, ESPN.com. It was bracketology, right? And the picture was a bracket. And in bracketology. And then the headline said, bracketology, : the ACC used to have number 1 next to schools' names. That sounds like an unnecessary jab at the ACC, especially when you consider once you open the article, it is just bracketology. It is not an article about why the ACC is struggling or why the ACC's reputation is down. It's not an article about how the Big 12 is gaming the system to up their net rankings and why the ACC should follow it. It's not an article about any of that. It's just, here's the list of the teams we predict, meaning Joe Lunardi, ESPN bracketologist, predicts to be inside the tournament. And you know what's crazier about it? This was before UNC's most recent loss. So in the article, the ACC had a number 2 seed and a number 3 seed. The headline was, the ACC doesn't have a 1 seed. And the actual article goes, well, they have a 2 and a 3 seed. And oh, by the way, the SEC didn't have a number 1 seed in this, but we won't mention that in the headline. And then you look further, and Wake Forest was the first team out. They were number 69 out of the 68. That's just personal. That's a choice, right? That means you looked at 2. You could have gone either way, and you just chose to put Wake Forest out. And guess what? You may say, Tim, it's the middle of February. Doesn't matter. It's just bracketology. Except it does. Do you know why? Because the committee is made of humans. And humans are impacted by these sorts of things. It's not the BCS as it used to be. You don't just plug in numbers and then it goes like the old dial-up internet, and then it prints out a bracket, and we all go, perfect, let's fill it out and give $5 to our grandma to hold. Right? That's how most family bracket pools work, right? Mm-hmm. Then Lunardi went on Twitter, okay, and started just jabbing at the ACC. And I have a problem with the jabbing. Here's a sampling of what the Joe Lunardi bracketologist said. The ACC conference peaked in 2019, landing 3 of 4 number 1 seeds, including national champion Virginia. Since then, there's not been a single top-line selection from the ACC, its longest drought since seeding began in 1979. I have many flaws with this reporting as a measure of the strength of the ACC. First being, the ACC isn't getting top seeds. Fine. Also, the season doesn't end on Selection Sunday. Right? They put out the bracket, they name the seeds, and then they do something that is my favorite thing to possibly do in sports. They play the games.
Yeah.
After they seed it, which is subjective, which, by the way, in sports, there is not much that is subjective. But Selection Sunday is. Where you are seated is a decision by people in a room. It is subjective.
Just ask Florida State football.
That's a perfect example. You can win all your games and still not be one of the top 4 teams in college football playoff rankings. Similar, right? So to use the only subjective thing in college basketball as a sign that the ACC is falling, knowing that they play the games after the seeding, is ridiculous. Because guess what else has happened since the ACC has been a number 1 seed? 2019 is the last time an ACC team was a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. 2019.
The Duke?
Virginia. They had 3 of the 4.
Oh, yeah.
It was Virginia, and I think it was Duke also. And there was one other. Who knows? Could have been any of them. Since they've last been a number 1 seed. And keep in mind that the 2020 tournament was canceled.
Yes.
So we're looking at less than like the fewer tournaments. It's more impressive. They've had 6 Sweet 16 appearances, tied for second amongst all conferences. 4 Elite 8 appearances, tied for first among all conferences. They've had 3 Final Four appearances, that's first amongst all conferences. 6.2 wins over Ken Pom expectation, that is first among all conferences. 6.3 wins over seed expectation, that's first amongst all conferences. And they've had 23 total wins, that's tied for second amongst all conferences. If that conference that is first or second in darn near everything inside the tournament is not being given the top seeds, it's not the conference's fault. It's the seeders' fault. It is a flaw in the seeding because seeding is subjective. If seeding in the NCAA tournament were done the way seeding in the NBA or the NFL or any of the professional leagues was done, you couldn't argue with it, right? It's your record decides where you go, and there's tiebreakers based on in-conference records and all. Like, that's not subjective. That is the numbers decide where you go. But as soon as it's done by people in a room and they're told to put the 4 best teams on the top line, if the ACC is never on the top line, but then the ACC is routinely the most productive conference, that's a flaw in the seeding. That's not a flaw in the conference. If the ACC isn't getting top seeds because they keep getting deep tourney runs and they keep getting Final Fours, that is a flaw in whoever's deciding who the best teams are because they're not recognizing how good the ACC is. Now, can you solve it, right? What did I start this show talking about? Be a solutions guy, not a problems guy. The solution is difficult because I don't think you're ever going to convince the world to just count a game in an ACC conference game as more impressive win, lose, or draw than a game elsewhere. But what I do know is the teams that leave an ACC conference schedule are more battle-tested for the NCAA tournament than the other conferences. That's not me talking. That's the numbers talking. It's a shame that you would use where the teams are seated as some kind of decision on how quality those teams are when they routinely overperform against their seeding. That's like saying, actually, that's not even I was going to go down a college football analogy way, but I don't even think we have to do that because we don't have to use analogies in this case because it's literally happening. If Purdue is the number 1 seed again this year and they lose in the first round again this year, does that mean the Big Ten stinks or does that mean you should probably stop putting Purdue as a number 1 seed? Right? If you have a team that's always the top-ranked team and they always lose to good opponents, then maybe they shouldn't be the top-ranked team. Same is true in reverse. If a team is never the top-ranked team, yet they routinely make it as far as the top-ranked team should make it, maybe they should start being the top-ranked team.
Well, I think you brought it up. It's a flaw in the system, especially now with the emphasis on net ratings and things like that, because you've talked about with the Big 12, and you had a conversation with Adam Gold about this earlier today, is that the Big 12, what they have done as a conference, with the exception of maybe Kansas, because Kansas actually played some difficult teams out of conference, but they played a bunch of just not very good teams, not very good programs, and they blew them out, which boosts your ratings and these great win-loss records. So when the net ratings were for them when they started conference play were all pretty high. So you're playing against other highly rated, net-rated teams, which allows you to continue to keep your net rating high. Because they didn't play anybody.
I want to build off
it's gaming the system.
I want to build off what you're saying. This is how ridiculous the net rating is.
Yeah.
If a conference plays more conference games, like if they decide, hey, we have, with the ACC moving to 18 teams next year.
Yeah.
If they want to move from 20 to 24 conference games, that is going to massively hurt the conference.
It does.
Even though you may say you're replacing non-conference games, which are traditionally against bad teams, with games against better opponents, which I believe would make you more suited for a run in the NCAA tournament. It would massively hurt yourself because your conference net rating gets a net zero improvement in conference games. Because If you win by 32, the team you're playing lost by 32, they're your conference opponent. The conference gets no help, right? They're in the exact same spot overall. So like once your conference play starts, it's almost impossible for your net ratings to go up or down because it's so much is dependent on your opponent, right? Whether you win or lose, how good your opponent is matters. So if the ACC in their non-conference schedule doesn't light the world on fire by beating a bunch of bums, right? Beating a bunch of bad teams, they enter into the ACC. They're like, yeah, but once we're playing against other good ACC teams, our net rankings will go up. They won't. Because when UNC loses to Syracuse, Syracuse net ranking goes up, UNC's goes down, the ACC net no gain, right? It's even. So then all of their opponents moving forward aren't getting any gain because they're playing both Syracuse and UNC. It's a flaw in the system. The ACC should be a higher-ranked team. It should have higher-ranked teams in the NCAA tournament. Look no further for justification than the NCAA tournaments.
Also, just more teams, too.
True.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to me. And I like saying I'm a fan of logic and reason. When logic is this like smacking you in the face, wide open in the middle of the room, I get frustrated when everybody doesn't see it.